They are strangers to us. Long as our world has lived among them, the stars have offered scant overtures, save their faint flickers across the void. They are messengers of a universe that seems utterly barren of other life. In 1994, astronomers detected a planet around another star. But it's a world that was stillborn, formed of material thrown into space when its sun blew up. They found a second that is no planet at all. It turned out to be a dim star called a brown dwarf that simply caught in the orbit of a much larger star. And yet, there is reason to believe our galaxy teems with planets. 1,500 light years from Earth, the Orion Nebula is one of its most active regions of starbirth and a hotbed of new solar systems. Using the Hubble Space Telescope, astronomers are combing this region for moments that mark the early lives of stars and even planets. Something remarkable has appeared around fully half the young stars sighted. Vast platters of dust and gas, 10 times larger than our own solar system. In time, gravity will concentrate this material, drawing it together into asteroids and comets, but also planets and moons. There are 100 billion stars in our galaxy. A recent study claims that there may be 500 billion planets. Where, astronomers ask, are there worlds like our own?
We've seen ourselves as alone in this enormous universe in which the distances are so great that they boggle our minds. And yet, if we could only find life in other places, we'd realize that we belong with them, that all together we make up something that the universe was calling forth because it needed it.
If we were to discover life elsewhere in the universe, so long as it can be shown to be independent of life on Earth, I think that would be the greatest scientific discovery of all time. Now, the reason I make this statement is because, according to conventional biology, life is a freak, a fluke, a statistically extremely improbable accident that occurred just here on Earth.
For millennia, we have locked our gaze on the heavens, awaiting some glimmer of other worlds. Tonight, our suspense is finally rewarded. At the Lick Observatory near San Jose, California, a momentous discovery is at hand.
They're locked in. These four are locked in.
These two are rolling. I will get these two going next.
Yeah.
I think these are the next two highest.
Yeah. I mean, I think this, if we had to give a talk tomorrow on giant planets, those four stars would be the ones we'd be talking about.
Okay, fine.
Paul Butler and Jeff Marcy are planet hunters. They are astronomers who study the nuances of stellar motion for hints of planets, using a technique they pioneered. For 8 hard years, they've been laboring in obscurity. Now they've been beaten to the punch. Rivals just scored the first true planet ever discovered beyond our solar system.
The
Swiss team of Michel Mayor and Didier Queloz have announced the detection of a planet circling the star 51 Pegasi. The news made headlines around the world.
And so we went to the telescope.
Nous nous sommes donc rendus à notre télescope.
Marcy and Butler
pour confirmer
confirmed
la
the
nouvelle.
Swiss finding. It was not the kind of planet anyone expected to find. A giant, even larger than Jupiter, yet so close to its star that it speeds around it every 4 days. Its atmosphere is heated to about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Its parent star, 51 Pegasi, is as bright as our own sun. Planet hunters cannot see through its glare, but they can tell there's a planet by charting the minute effects of its gravity.
Okay, Wayne, roll on 51 Peg. Okay.
So 51 Peg would be expected to have a radius of about 30% larger than our own Jupiter.
Is going to have the same radius. Thank you, sir.
Starting the exposure. Well, you can think of it this way. Our sun sits like a giant bowling ball, and the biggest planet in our solar system, Jupiter, is 1/1000th of the mass of our sun. So when Jupiter goes around, it barely moves the sun around. So our sun is an almost immovable rock in the face of Jupiter. But the sun does move a little bit, and here's how fast. The sun moves about 12 meters per second, which is about the same speed as the fastest Olympic sprinters. So our sun is in effect sprinting around in a little circle due to the pull of Jupiter. We just got a great exposure on 51 Peg. 4,600 counts.
Absolutely first rate.
Looks excellent.
A star's wobble, even a slight one, may be the calling card of a planet. Marcy and Butler's readings are so precise they can study stars 100 light years away and detect a wobble down to 3 meters per second, the equivalent of human jogging speed.
We got it before he got away.
Marcy and Butler are looking for a wobble that displays a more complex pattern,
Or it could
the sign of an actual solar
right on
system.
the verge of either
The
one.
prospect is that much closer
This we should try to
as
do
8 years of
much
data
more.
come into sharp focus.
This is huge. This is huge.
That's frightening is what it is.
It's
That
frightening.
star is...
It's huge. There's something really wacky going on in this system. It's happening wacky literally on periods of days or weeks, but then over many years you've got this wild trend going on. So this could be the first authentic, real live solar system that's detected. We won't really know until we get another year or two of observations, but we're real
This
close.
star, 55 Cancri, is one of the 120 candidates in our corner of the galaxy
looks like it's
that
trending
Marcy and
downward.
Butler are surveying.
And if you
This could be 2 or even 3 planets.
This is beyond our wildest expectations when we started this 8 years ago.
Yeah.
We're going to have a few dozen new planets discovered within the next year. So we've gone almost all of humanity's existence discovering the 9 planets in our solar system, and suddenly our inventory of planets is going to double or triple within the next, literally the next year.
Up here. I want to see 2-3 more points, and then I'll believe it.
Either that variability is
As our
correct,
discoveries mount,
take the bus to the
so do our
Golden
hopes.
and take the
Each new one brings us closer to solving one of the deepest mysteries in science.
Not much going on there.
The question is, are there other planetary systems which have a planet somewhere in that system which has the characteristics which make life possible? Liquid water, primarily.
And people have wondered since antiquity whether life on Earth is an accident, whether things happen in other places the way they happened here. I think we now have a scientific basis to conclude that it's quite likely that life has happened elsewhere. In fact, I would say an absolute certainty. So I think you'd have to be made out of stone not to want to know the answer to that question.
It would certainly surprise me if we were unique. Having said that we are interesting and complicated, I still at the same time think that we arose according to perfectly understandable, if complicated, steps. I don't think there was any magic or divine intervention. So it seems reasonable to me to think that there are a lot of hospitable places where people like us could have evolved.
Technology is advancing our search for other worlds. Through history, we've also employed a tool just as powerful: hope. The 17th century astronomer Johannes Kepler imagined that intelligent creatures had constructed dwellings on the sides of moon craters. In 1835, a newspaper announced that a noted astronomer had glimpsed astonishing details of moon creatures. They were the Selenites, a civilization of lunar man-bats. Plans were hatched to make contact. Missionaries stood ready, while abolitionists vowed to rid the moon of any incidents of slavery. If anything, the great moon hoax only fueled our appetite for aliens. To early civilizations, the red planet evoked blood, fire, and war. The Romans named it for their god of battle, Mars. At the end of the 19th century, the Italian astronomer Giovanni Schiaparelli noted markings running down the planet. On closer examination, he saw lattices of double lines. He began to name them and connect them in a vast global network. He speculated that they carried melting snow from the poles to the dry interior. For one astronomer, Percival Lowell, the lure of these features was irresistible. He commissioned a new telescope to study the Martian landscape for himself. Lowell saw them as canals and found twice as many as Schiaparelli. He came to a dramatic conclusion. They were traces of a sophisticated society intent on shaping its environment on the grandest of scales.
Lowell looked at Mars and he thought he saw the future of Earth. He looked at this planet, the red planet Mars, and thought here was a dying civilization desperate to rescue itself from what we would today call an ecological crisis. He thought the same thing would happen to Earth, that eventually Earth would dry up as well and become a planet where we had to build some kind of network of canals to save ourselves from drought and famine. So he thought that Mars was a vision of our own future.
With an impassioned series of best-selling books, Lowell pitched his vision of Mars to his eager public. But was it true? No, said his peers, but Lowell would not be deterred. He sent the astronomer David Todd to South America to gather more evidence. Todd took pictures by the thousands and analyzed them in detail. His conclusion, canals aplenty.
Well, I think at the end of the last century, it was still possible to be a serious astronomer and believe that there might be advanced life there. And although astronomy was in a fairly advanced state at the turn of the century, biology certainly wasn't. The nature of life was very ill understood. The molecular basis for life was still at least 50 years away. And so nobody really had a clue about how life originated or would evolve on other planets.
While the debate raged, Mars gripped the popular imagination. Who were these Martians who had mastered the elements through engineering? They must have evolved even beyond the human. They owed their large heads, barreled chests, and long snouts to reduced gravity and a thin atmosphere. Mars was alluring, and it sold soap. Schemes for making contact abounded. Giant mirrors would flash a greeting. Light beams. Call them up. Or use mental telepathy. Perhaps, said one French astronomer, an ancient race of Martians had been signaling us since the age of the dinosaur. They simply got tired of trying. Today, astronomers routinely monitor radio energy from space. In the 1920s, however, the notion was nothing short of radical. One maverick believed he could receive messages from Mars. It was David Todd.
He was a visionary in one sense. He saw the coming age of interplanetary communication, when humans would routinely communicate with other worlds, not with Martians, but with space probes that humans have sent out to Mars and to other planets. Todd made what was probably the first feasible proposal for interplanetary communication, which was launching a balloon with him aboard and a radio receiver that could, he hoped, to detect signals from Martians who might be trying to contact Earth.
With great fanfare, Todd announced his fateful launch. He would listen for Martian signals from high in the atmosphere. The project never got off the ground. In 1924, Todd convinced the U.S. Armed Forces to suspend communications for an unprecedented 3-day period. As Mars approached its closest orbit to Earth, all ears were tuned in. Speculation abounded. But there was only silence. Then, the aliens found us.
What's that? Some sort of a war tank. They're not human!
What did they want from us and our fertile planet? In the years that followed, motion pictures enacted the moment of contact when aliens would make their case. They came to take control of our world.
You'll find that conquering the Earth isn't so simple.
This is our planet, Astron Delta.
They sought haven from a hostile universe.
During the 23rd time rotation, our sun began to die. Our eyes developed to this state to combat the ever-growing darkness. We were forced to migrate.
Come on in!
They yearn for our family values.
Welcome, Santa Claus. We hope you'll make the children on Mars very happy.
I'll try, dear lady.
Quiet, remote, and
They would stop at nothing to recover the one resource they had lost in a cataclysmic war: men.
Who are you? My name is Naya. I will select some of your strongest men to return with me to Mars.
And if they don't want to go with you?
There is no if.
Scientists adopted a somewhat more sober view. In the 1950s, they began to envision the day when astronauts would actually venture to Mars to explore it. But much of Lowell's vision of the planet had endured. Mars was depicted as harsh, barren, yet Earth-like, with running water and sparse vegetation. This myth was about to be dashed. In 1964, the Mariner 4 mission sent back a startling set of images of the Martian surface. Lowell's canals were not the product of nature or Martians, but of his fertile imagination.
I will never forget, as long as I live, seeing the front page newspaper with these pictures from the Mariner 4 space probe. And I realized at age 12 that there were no Martians, there were no Martian canals. All those marvelous visions of life on the red planet were all wrong. And for me, it was much worse than ceasing to believe in Santa Claus, or for that matter, ceasing to believe in God, because it took so much romance out of the solar system. And after that, the solar system began to seem like a more alien, inhuman place.
If in the distant past life did develop on Mars' surface, it was killed off by an increasingly severe environment. Once the planet was warm and wet, like Earth. Then its atmosphere thinned, and it plunged into a deep ice age. The surface of Mars has remained frozen in time. For billions of years, the planet's thick crust has prevented the welling up of molten rock from its core. What Mars lacks is the volcanic activity that has long replenished our atmosphere and circulated water from below.
Like 3.5 to 4 billion years ago, Mars still had water, so it's not at all unreasonable that early Mars, as well as early Earth, had abundant microbial life. However, then Mars and Earth diverged very substantially geologically for reasons that we don't understand fully at this time. Mars now is left with only a very small atmosphere, an atmosphere which is only a few thousandths the pressure of our own atmosphere. Mars dried up 1 billion or a billion and a half years after its formation. Earth, on the other hand, retained its water.